Whenever you're ready.
Have you ever needed help but just don't know what to say or do? Sometimes our words just don't come out the right way. And most of us have been in this situation before, and this also happens when you're choking. Sometimes we see our family or friends choking our food or drinks, and what we automatically want to say is like, oh, just drink water. But that's not always the best solution. And today I want to explain to you how to perform first aid on someone who is choking. And first, I'll go over the universal signs for someone choking, then the steps on how to perform first aid, and then what to do if you're a bystander. So first, the universal signs for choking, obviously it's someone just grabbing their throat, and either they can cough forcefully or they cannot. And also they're unable to talk, difficulty breathing, or inability to cough forcefully. Also, their skin and lips might turn blue. And if the person loses consciousness, that person who's giving first aid, make sure you want to lay them on the ground, anywhere that's free of any objects. And then once you lay them on the ground, you want to give them 30 compressions. And what you want to do is just make sure you're doing it with the palm of your hand, just right here at the heel. And you're just going like that right by like the middle. And after you give 30 compressions, make sure those 30 compressions are at the same speed. Don't go too fast or don't go too slow. And it's also helpful to count out loud. And after you give 30 compressions, you want to give 2 breaths to that person. And while you're giving these 2 breaths, make sure you pinch their nose and tilt their head up. And if the person starts to cough or throw up, make sure you want to tilt them towards you, not away from you, because if you flip them away from you, they might roll over, you're not be able to catch them. So if you roll them towards you, you'll have more control of their body. And how to perform the first aid. So you want to remember it as 5 and 5. You want to remember it as 5 back blows and 5 abdominal thrusts. So the back blows you're going to want to do with the heel of your hand right here, and make sure you're going like this, not just going like that. You want to make it forceful. And for the abdominal thrusts, for someone who is not pregnant, you want to make sure you get your hand like this and put your other hand like this, not just going like this, because that doesn't really do anything. If you're doing like this above the belly button, it's more forceful. And for someone who's pregnant, you want to do it up here because of their belly. And yeah, that's the proper hand placement, and that person is somewhat doing it right. And if you're a bystander, you want to make sure that you're clearing people of any objects or anything like that. Make sure you give the person who's doing first aid enough space to perform the first aid. Sometimes people like to get in a big crowd and like to see what's going on, but that usually gives that person pressure to do well and try to save that person's life. And also, you want to call 911 as soon as possible. That way, if that person does lose consciousness, the paramedics can be on their way. And also, if you're on the phone calling 911, you want to give the description of the person, the gender, what age they look around, and also, if they're conscious or unconscious. That way, when the paramedics get there, they know what to deal with. And I have a personal experience with this. When I was at work one day, this person was getting off the ride, and they had thrown up on the ride, and once they were getting off, they couldn't, I don't know what happened, but they were choking on their vomit. And I was pretty far away, but I could see everything happening, so I had already called 911. And the person that was there dealing with that situation, they were dealing with the person and doing the first aid on them, and they were able to save their lives. Once the paramedics got there, they took them to the little ambulance right there, and they helped them out, and they were all good at the end. And yeah, so if you see anyone with these type of universal signs, just make sure that even if they're not asking for help, you might just want to do it because you can save someone's life.
All right, Kim. The rhetorical question at the beginning is okay, but you're having to look at your notes, and your start should be a little bit more prepared, I think, than having to kind of glance down and read what it is you're saying there. That puts you in the wrong frame of mind and gives the audience, I think, the wrong impression at the beginning of the speech. The truth is that you stop looking at your notes for the most part during the speech, and the one place that's most noticeable is at the beginning, which is the place that it ought to be least noticeable. I did think that you have a very clear statement of what your purpose was, and there was a good preview. You've got a visual that includes a description of what the supporting structure is going to be, so it should be hard for us to get lost. As long as you stick to that itinerary, we should be able to follow along with you pretty clearly. I was a little confused, though, because the very first thing that you do when you get to the body of the speech is start describing things that have to do with CPR and not have to do with choking issues. You're talking about doing chest compressions and making them very rhythmic, and I'm going, well, you're basically giving us a CPR lesson, not describing it as CPR, and doing it in 20 seconds in a speech that's really supposed to be about responding to choking issues. So I was confused, and I thought that was problematic. Now, when you got to, by the way, laying somebody down, how are you going to lay them down and then do the maneuver that you're talking about later on? That seems completely confusing. It's almost contradictory to what you're talking about later on. The description of the pressure point I thought was pretty good. I like the gestures that you use to kind of show how you're supposed to do these things when you actually do get to the choking issue. I thought that was pretty effective. Plus the visuals combined with that well to make it clear what it is that you were trying to describe to us. I didn't really hear a lot of sources being cited, although I did see some identification on some of the visuals that you had. I do think that you want to provide us with a little bit of research in this material. I know it comes from someplace. The story that you had, I think, is a good one. It needs a little bit more context, and it might make a better attention device than sticking it at the end of the presentation. I think it would be something that would be a good start to the speech and a little bit less likely to encourage you to look at your notes, instead mostly just talk to us. Your facial expressions look fine. You look, like you're engaged. Like I said, I thought the visuals were pretty effective. They're large enough to see, and you integrate them pretty well into the speech. Your eye contact, as I mentioned, got better during the presentation, but there were a few places where the notes swing around a little bit. Voice projection, all that seems pretty solid. It just feels like it's not as well developed as it could be, and that you could use a little bit more practice. I don't want to say, I think we've talked about this before, there's always that step where you go through when you're learning to do something where you're hitting all of the right points, but it still feels a little mechanical, and that's sort of where you are still. It needs to be a little bit more naturalistic. And the conclusion seemed a bit abrupt. I think that you could kind of remind us, especially when you got the fives that you want us to remember there at the end, maybe give us a quick reminder of some of the key points that we should have there. Although, like I said, I think you wisely ignored the CPR stuff that's not really related to the subject. All right, thank you.